Hi everyone, it's Andy from Hobby Headquarters. Today we're going to be building the Dragon Models 1/35 scale Magach 3 with ERA, or Explosive Reactive Armor. This is a fairly new kit from Dragon, just came out within the last month, and it's based on the American M48 that they released within the last year. So everything inside this box is all brand new tooling. Very, very nice too. I did a little review earlier in the month and very nicely molded. Looks like it's going to go together real well. There are only 420 parts in that kit, so it's a mid-range, not super small, not super heavy on the parts. It has DS track and a few other DS parts for parts of the gun as well. Now the box art shows that it says the 6-Day War, and this is a little inaccurate right here because the Magach 3s with ERA weren't actually used with ERA until the early 80s, about the time of the invasion of Lebanon, 1982. So that is the way that we'll build it up, as the invasion of Lebanon time period, with that same color of like a greenish gray, as they would call it. So it looks to be a very nice kit to build, so let's get started on it. And I thought I would just give you a quick breakdown on the parts inside here if anyone's interested in seeing what's inside. Now I know this kit did come out just a couple weeks ago, but it is, like I said, a very new kit. Now here is the M48 lower hull, which is a bathtub style hull, as well as the upper hull is all one piece as well. You can see those parts. When we get to the gun barrel, this is something I appreciate greatly. This gun barrel is slide molded, and it's all one piece all down the line, so there's only just the slightest little amounts we have to clean up on it. You also have these parts right here that are slide molded as well. And you have some more hull parts. This is actually for the Magach 2, and I used to use a few of those parts on it to make this Magach 3. You've got a couple of sprues of wheels and tires. The rubber is separate on this, so we can paint that up separately. That'll make it a little bit quicker for assembly. Then we get to the turret, and then the turret is just what you would expect on it on the regular M48 kit. And some more body parts off the regular M48. Now the kit is 420 parts, so not too bad when it comes to building a Dragon kit. Something that's definitely doable. And finally, didn't open this bag yet. This is the ERA armor, and this is the part that's going to be a little bit more work, because you get quite a bit of this block armor, multiple sprues of it. This is your machine gun sprue, which those look really nice, all the individual rounds in the belt, as well as all the machine guns. Some more of your applique armor, and it's nice the way they've done this now too. They give you all one big piece that you're going to mount to the tank, and then you glue the individual blocks, and they're all pre-lettered right there so you don't mess it up, and just make it go a little bit quicker when you're doing the assembly on it. And more machine gun parts and some clear parts for the sprues. Now for the DS parts, the tracks are a DS plastic. They have the guide horns already fitted into place there. And lastly, we have the dust shield, or dust cover I should say, for the gun, as well as this piece right here. And this, have to do a little bit of sanding on this to get rid of this little mold mark right here, but this stuff actually looks pretty good once you get it all painted up. Better than what a plastic part would look like. And then of course there is just a little photo etch and some wire, and then of course the decals, which we'll break those apart more in depth when we actually go to build the kit. So what I'll probably do right here is in this video here, you've seen all the things that we're going to do. Okay, the very first step we need to tackle on this kit is all of the road wheels, and there are quite a few pieces to this. Now this is a two-piece, both sides of the wheel, and I find it's much easier to glue it together than do the sanding. You'll find that most of the little burrs always line up, so you can easily take it out. And then once you get that portion done, you can glue the outer part of the road wheel on, and the same process. glue those on like that, line up the little burrs, and then you can take them out at the same time. And it just saves you a little bit of time in sanding, because there are a lot of connection points on these tires and wheels. They did a very nice job molding them. There's probably 16 little pieces you have to sand off on each one of these things. So once you get it to that point, you can sand them down really well, get rid of the parting seam, and have a really nice piece. And that also holds true on the return rollers. I just got done gluing those together. I think they're set up enough, and you can see how I was telling you about the burrs on that too, and you'll be easily just able to take out both at the same time. So it pretty much cuts your sanding time in half. So I'm taking a few minutes break from sanding all the road wheels. There's quite a few of them, and I thought I would start applying some of the lower parts of the hull. And Dragon has very, very detailed out this bottom piece, but the parts are specific according to what they're saying, that each one of them has to go in the right order. So before you go and cut all of them off the sprue, which I almost did, keep in mind that you want to know exactly where each one of those parts is going to go. So I've these four right here are all the same, so I was able to cut all of those off. And then of course this big one right here is its standalone piece as well. But there's lots of little hooks and little other suspension parts that need to go into place that are specific for each one of those. So just keep that in mind. And then for the top part of the hull, we can also start attaching all of the return rollers, and they all mate right to the top in here. So I'm going to go ahead and glue all of those on. Those are all uniform on both sides of it, and I'll show you what the suspension looks like once I get all the parts on it. Okay, as you can see, I've got all of the lower parts glued onto the hull, including the drive sprockets, which is made up of about 8 pieces total. So they're very, very well detailed. Also worked on a little bit of the upper hull, and I had to just wash some stuff off of here. That's why it's still a little wet. All this top went together really well. They do give you clear vision blocks, so we'll have to remember to put a little masking over the front of each one of those before we do any of the painting. Now, I was just dry fitting a little while ago, and very, very nice fit on this upper and lower hull. In fact, you can hear it just clicks together and wants to stay that way. It's not loose at all. Fits very, very well. So we're going to go ahead and glue this together as soon as all that water dries off of it there. In the meantime, I'm going to start showing you the ERA armor. And Dragon has molded each one of these individual blocks separately, and they've made it so that they've put the corresponding numbers. So this part right here is P31, so it's telling you use the P31 pieces on this. And rather than just gluing it together or molding it as one big piece, they individually molded it, and it looks very, very nice and fits very, very well. So what I will do now is I am going to glue up all of these pieces, and we'll show you how they fit onto the hull. Okay, I've finished attaching the upper and lower hull together, and I put a little extra liquid cement in this area, and then of course squeezed real tight to get that little bead of molten plastic that comes out, or liquid plastic I should say. Let that dry, sanded that off so we have no crack or anything on it. We've attached the lower ERA, and I'm about to attach the upper ERA armor, which we've built up already. But here's a little tip. There are 2 little faint little push pin marks on the upper hull. They're real mild, almost didn't notice them the first time. And there's also a couple of little brackets that you need to sand off too. Those are very visible, but those push pin marks, if you were to glue this into place, it'd be really kind of hard getting the sandpaper in there to get rid of them. So just keep that in mind as you're adding on the ERA. Okay, now we can begin working on the rear engine deck, and it's made up of many multiple faceted pieces here. To start off, we're going to attach the rear portion of it, and then there's some kind of like a little jigsaw puzzle, some pieces that kind of fit together into all these little seams, and I'll see if I can kind of show you how it all goes together. I was doing some dry fitting a little while ago, and as many facets and little nooks and crannies there are to glue together, it actually does fit together pretty well. So that portion will go on to there, and then you'll glue the let's see, this one should go, this will go up and through here, that'll get glued together, and finally the upper plate will get glued on. Now I've got a little bit more sanding to do on these to make sure they fit really well, and it's kind of hard with the camera in the way to get in there because you're going to need both hands to put these together. So I'm going to assemble all these pieces, and I'll come back and show you what it looks like when it's done. Okay, we've got all the other pieces into place, and let's see if this one is going to fit as good as they did. And it looks like it does. It looks like it's going to fit really well. There will be a little bit of a seam right in through here that we'll wait for that to fully dry and see if we can sand that out, as well as any of the other seams on this side in there too. But yeah, multiple faceted pieces, but fit together really well. Okay, now I'm in the process of attaching all of the suspension arms, and there's quite a bit to these. Up in the front here, there are a lot of little shock absorbers that all fit onto these, and they've kind of interlaced back and forth. And what I'll do is I'll show you the last one, kind of show you what I was talking about. Pop this one on, get that in nice and tight, and so this is how the majority of them will, or the front ones, go on the same way. Get the arm lined up. I don't know why there we go. And then it's a matter of taking the shock, getting it in the right direction. And then you've got to get this to go onto the back. Get the glue on there first. So you can see it's very, very accurately done. It's just a little difficult sometimes, especially with the camera here too, is not helping either. Drop that into place. And then you can just use your tweezers to attach the back, and you can see how nice the suspension arms look on it. Now that we have all of those attached, we can just go down the line and start attaching all of the road wheels. Now all of the road wheels on this, including the very front one, are the exact same road wheels, so we'll go ahead and glue all those into place, and you can just see how nice of a lower suspension they are. Now I thought about leaving the extra side pieces off, but when you build the wheels, because there's that extra piece that looks part of the rubber, to paint that separately. The problem is the inside is still the metal part, so it actually wouldn't have really saved us any time. So we just built them up as one piece, and then we'll mask off using our circle template to get the rubber painted. So here we are. Here is the completed lower hull, or mostly completed, we'll call it. I just want to compliment Dragon on the engineering on this kit, because this kit went together very, very well. I was very, very impressed with the engineering. In fact, it just feels like a substantial piece once you get it to this point. Everything fit really well, and I still have to do some sanding and some cleanup on it. We're still working on some of the seams over in here, but just a very, very nice lower hull for this kit. Now I'm in the process right now of gluing all of the parts on one of the fenders, and there is no less than a total of about 26 parts on this fender. Normally I would look at it and say, why is there so many parts on it? But actually this is super, super detailed, and just is going to look really, really good. And once again, dry fitting it on the side of the vehicle, and you can see that it just basically just pops right into place. Will glue up really well. So I've got, I'll start gluing those on pretty soon. One other quick little thing I'll point out to you too is when you go to attach this, it's one of the road wheels, but it's acting as the idler wheel on this particular vehicle. I would go ahead and put a little touch of extra super glue up inside here, because this has got not much of a connection point on it, and I just feel that if you're putting the rubber band tracks on, the rubber band tracks could have a tendency to pull it, and it might flex the wheel and make it a little crooked on there. So I went ahead and put a little glue on there. Now it's really rock solid. I was test fitting the tracks a little bit. It did nothing to it, so it stayed nice and firm. But earlier, before I put the glue on it, it was starting to pull on them a little bit. So I've got the side fenders glued on now, and all that fit really well. There is one little thing coming up. In the instructions, they show, I'll show it to you guys right here, some more block armor, which would correspond to these two spots right here. Unfortunately, the instructions don't tell you which block armor to use. I've got a really good idea which one it is, but I'm going to actually wait to the very last to make sure I'm not using a piece of block armor that I need somewhere else for it. But like I said, it's probably going to be the last two left on the sprue, but they're not called out for on there. Now, I just recently started building up the ERA armor for the turret. And the instructions and the way the sprues are labeled is different from each other. And honestly, I'd like to walk you through it and show you how each one of them works. It's about 80% correct, but there's a few times where they flipped a few numbers and one number is completely off completely. Now, the back of these fit like a jigsaw puzzle, so there's only one way to do it. And if you cut off all the parts, some of them have this part labeled on the back of the piece, some of them do not. So just carefully, before you start just cutting everything off and sanding, I would kind of like take one little section at a time, figure out exactly which ones are going to work on it. Like this big one right here was the same in this one, whereas these two were flip-flop. And on this piece, this one was right, this one was right, and like this one was wrong, and this one was wrong, or completely wrong. So, and it was only off a little bit, and you can kind of, like I said, you can figure out by the shape on the back how they go. But just be careful as you're about to do that. Now, the last one, I'm started to fit these on the front of the turret, and we'll see how these go on. So I'm going to get these glued into place, and I'll come back and I'll show you what it looks like. So I'm in the process of assembling the turret, and the ERA armor and all the other parts on the lower part of the hull went on very, very easily. The upper turret, a little bit of a difficulty getting everything to line up because there's no real mark on anything that I can find, at least, that's going to make all of this ERA armor line up properly, and then use the little racks that go around it as well. Now, as it goes for the rear rack, excuse me, it's made up of these 5 really finely molded pieces. Now, they want you to stack them up and build them separately, which I was pulling my hair out trying to get that done, and I just decided I'm going to build it up on the vehicle. So we put our outer edge frames on, and then we're gluing up the bottom frame right now. And then finally, the last thing we will attach will be these pieces, which I've just started to glue those two together. You've got to kind of do it piecemeal, doing a couple at a time, getting those to line up, and then gluing the final ones. And then hopefully we can get this to glue right into place right here. So you can see it's a very finely molded piece, kind of difficult to get in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep on working on the ERA armor and some of the other parts around here, and making sure that everything is lined up. I'm kind of using pictures more than anything to find out exactly where the armor goes. So here we are. Here is the completed model. I was able to work through and get all of the little tiny parts all over the top of the turret. Also figured out that it's part 57 on the L sprue and 68 for those two little pieces. And those are the two I thought it was going to be. They really match up perfectly, but I just wanted to make sure to the very end, make sure we didn't have any missing pieces. Now, as I was telling you earlier, the bottom of the kit goes together very quickly and fits real well. Everything goes great. Now the top, the fit is very good on the top, but there is a lot of little tiny pieces, and they can sometimes get a little tough when you've got big fingers and you're trying to put little tiny parts on. But I think we worked through it pretty well, and as you can see, the kit looks absolutely beautiful. Now I've just dry fitted the tracks into place, just snapped them on there. Obviously we have to paint those, and we're going to weather those up separately. And because they are DS tracks, now they're riding a little bit high here, but we can go ahead and glue them onto the return rollers, so it, not for sag, because this vehicle wouldn't really have any sag, but that way they're not riding up high and almost touching the bottom of the fenders here. So like I said, other than the fact that there was a lot of little parts, which is not a flaw by any means, it's just a little bit tougher to work with. But the ERA looks really good on here, and I forgot to put the little mortar on earlier, but we've glued that into place. Now that we have the entire vehicle painted black, oh, I should also point out too, I painted the whole thing black to see if I had any flaws, because the black, when you're dealing with the gray plastic and you get the little bit of the liquid glue on there, it sometimes has some shiny areas that you don't know if they're going to look right or not. So I sprayed the whole thing black. Looks pretty good. Doesn't look like there's any flaws I need to clean up now. So now that we have it all black, we can go ahead and just do some quick little highlighting with white on some of those areas, which I won't show that because I know I do that in all the videos. But we'll come back and I'll show you the painting of the actual main body color. We're going to mix up some paint to make the Israeli color, and we're going to use 50% XF66 and 50% XF49 and make up the Israeli Defense Force color. Now, when we go to put this paint on, we don't want to go super heavy because we've already put the black and white shadow coat and highlight coat on. So we want a lot of that to show through as if it's been in the sun and fading out a little bit in certain areas. So just lightly go back and forth, just putting a next coat on, and I'll show you what it looks like once it's done. So here is the look we got with the black and white coat underneath the Israeli Defense Force color. Now I did go ahead and clear coat the entire model with a TS80 from Tamiya, and we also put the decals on and re-cleared it again. But you can see the color. Hopefully you can see it on the camera that there's a nice variation in color, some faded areas, things like that. So now that the entire vehicle has been clear coated, we can go ahead and start doing our weathering on it. Now I'm not going to go super heavy on the weathering because I like the way the fading came out, and I've been watching some videos showing the actual real vehicles from the 80s, and they were a little dirty and a little dusty, but not terrible. So we might just do a little bit of chipping on it and then a little bit of washes on it and things like that, just to make them pop a little bit more. Okay, we're gonna lightly weather up the tracks, giving them kind of a dusty, dirty look to it. We're just putting a little thin coat of enamel thinner on here, and then just using a little bit of our Vallejo light sienna, and we're gonna mix it with a little bit of the desert dust to kind of give it a little bit lighter feel to it, since it's supposed to be more desert fighting. And just kind of go back and forth, blotting this on, pushing it into all the little crevices, and then after you're done, kind of giving it a wipe just slightly over the top to clear the pads, but still leaving the dirt inside all of the lower areas. And what we'll do is we're going to go over the entire tracks, and then I'll show you what they look like before we pop them on. Okay, now that the pigments have dried, the next step we're going to do is I've taken a little thinner and added a little streaking grime to it. So we've just thinned it down a little bit more than we normally would. And then taking our old paintbrush, definitely want to do this inside of a box or anything because this makes a mess. But we want to just give it a little spritzing. Of color, and that's going to give it some stains and dirt marks all over it on it, and making sure we do both sides, which that side hasn't dried as much, but we'll let that side dry a little bit more, and then I'm come back and show you the next step. Now that the tracks have fully dried, just taking our wide flat brush, we're going to just lightly go over the top here and start pulling off all the excess just on the pads. That's why we don't want to scrub too hard, and that's why having this big soft brush just really hits the highlights of this. And that way the pad will look a little bit cleaner. So I'm going to go ahead and finish those up and we'll snap them on the vehicle. Now it's time to do a little light chipping. We're using our foam, torn foam brush, and just dipped it in a little bit of our black-brown mixture. And then we're just going to tap it to some of the edges. I'm not going to go too heavy like I told you earlier on the chipping and weathering. Just a few little areas that might get a little wear and tear. So I'm going to lightly go over the vehicle and we'll come back and show you what it looks like. So I finished up the light chipping. Now we're just going to do a little thinner on some of this block armor and a few of these other areas in here, and just using a little bit of streaking grime, hitting mainly just the edges of some of the armor plate, and then just taking our brush with the thinner on it, kind of brush it in and make it highlight all these little rivets or little bolts. And it's going to be subtle. It's not going to, well, I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to go super heavy on this weathering job. and then just blend it into place. So I'm going to go over the vehicle and give it a little bit of weathering like that, and we'll show you the next step. Okay, now that we have all of the staining that we want on it, this is a little trick to make the bolts all pop out. We're taking the exact same color that we painted the main body with, and just going to do just some slight little dry brushing, and trying to hit mainly the bolt heads and any of the corners. And you can see that it starts to highlight those little things, because now they're not as dark as the surrounding areas that have all the weathering product on it. And it's subtle, but it does make the little pieces, the detail, really pop out. So I'm going to go ahead and do that over the rest of the vehicle, just lightly, just to make some of this detail pop a little bit. And when it dries, it just has just a little bit of brightness to it that the surrounding area doesn't have. And the last step I'm doing right now is just taking a big fat brush, dipped with a little thinner and a little touch of the light sienna. Just enough to make a little bit of a slurry, and we're just kind of blotting it on. And when it dries, you'll start to see it start to do this stuff right here, leaving some dirt marks. And once again, you'll just take your big wide flat brush and knock off any of the excess. But it'll leave some of it in the little corners and crevices, as if there's been some dust that's accumulated on it. So it's a little bit of a process, but I'm going to go over the vehicle right now and just do a light coat of the dust over the top. Well, here we are. Here's our completed model. And I'll kind of go over. I did a last couple of things. We put the clear lenses, painted those, and put those in place. Also, if you remember earlier, we had put a little liquid mask over all of the vision blocks, and we've removed all the mask off of that as well, and then weathered a little bit around it, put a little grime and stuff around it. Can be kind of like a little 360 right here. Now, I broke the antenna off just a little while ago, and I'll have to make up a new one of that. And the one that came with the kit is actually a little thick. I love the mount on it right there, but we'll easily just snap another one into place as soon as I get a lighter or stretch some sprue out on. Also give you a kind of a 360 from a little bit up above view. Also, I took a little bit of that toothbrush stuff that I put on the tracks and kind of spritzed it up from the back here, and you can see a couple of little minor stains I think will really pop out right there, and did that as well on the front. So there'll be a little bit of staining down there, and a little bit of it pops up on the tops as well. So the kit, I think, looks absolutely wonderful, and I think Dragon did a completely wonderful job putting this kit together. The lower hull, like I was telling you, goes together really, really well. Basically a breeze. The top is a little bit more difficult, but that's mainly just because of the small parts, and it's not a flaw with the kit or anything. It's just a lot of really detailed parts and getting all that little ERA armor on. But actually, now that it's done, I'm absolutely love the kit, and I haven't seen too many videos in the last week or week and a half. It's because I've been working on this as well as my big diorama, and I've had so much fun doing the diorama, and I've been ordering a lot of extra grass and things like that to really make it really pop. And I'm also thinking about doing a secondary diorama, maybe like an Israeli one, having this. And a while ago, also did a Tamiya Tyran 5 that we painted up. Didn't weather this one, just did some weather, just some light little chipping and things on it right there, but no other weathering. So we could easily weather that up and add it to this one over here to do a little side-by-side diorama. So this, like I said, was a great kit, and I would highly recommend, if you're looking to do some Israeli armor, this would be the one to do. So I want to thank you guys as always for watching, and please stay tuned because we have many more videos coming.